Oh, hi everyone, just out on nightly patrol. Oh, but do me a favor, check out patreon.com/LastAngryGeek. There, you can make a donation that will help me get my shows made. I can make new shows, buy better equipment, and there's some great rewards for everyone who donates. So do me a favor, check it out. Thanks. Hello everyone, and welcome back to You Know Who! I'm your host, The Reviewer. I'm coming to you from my SARDIS. That stands for Studio and Relative Dimension in, Suffolk, I suppose. I've got better things to do than look out windows. With me, as always, is my cameraman, Jamie.
Go Aberdeen!
Quiet you! Today's episode features a flooded city, sign language, a dead alien king, and an explanation of paradox. This is Under the Lake and Before the Flood. In a Scottish loch, or lake, an unknown craft has been found underwater and brought into a base, known as the Drum. A sign language interpreter catches sight of an eyeless man in a tuxedo. The rest of the crew boards the ship and finds strange characters carved into the ship's wall. The crew departs save one. The man, a representative of the company financing the space, sees the ghost again, and the engines turn on. The commander has a split second to push one of his crew out of the way before he's burned to death. They then see their commander, joined by the tuxedo man who appears to be an alien, insubstantial, eyeless, and whispering. They're ghosts. The TARDIS arrives and the Doctor can tell his ship is not happy. He and Clara begin to look for the crew and see they're overlooking a flooded village. They come across the ghosts, but the Doctor has them stand their ground. The ghosts seem to examine them and then walk off. They follow the spirits into the hangar with the ship. They see the words inside the ship and the ghosts return, this time more aggressive. They run and find the rest of the crew who let them inside a sealed room. They psychic paper the crew to believing they're from UNIT, which they sort of are. They meet Pritchard, Bennett, O'Donnell, who's a huge fan of the Doctor's, Tim and Cass. The crew gets them up to speed and the Doctor tells them the Tuxedo Ghost is from the planet Tivoli, inhabited by a non-violent race of cowards. Of course, the first time we met a Tivolian, it was in the episode The God Complex, which we frequently discuss here in the SARDIS. Isn't that right, Jamie?
No, Reviewer. When I said you had a God complex, I was neither referring to your Doctor Who DVDs.
You're a tad sassy, Jamie, but I forgive you, for only I can bring true happiness to the masses.
Oy vey.
They discover the ghosts couldn't come into the Faraday cage. It's a room that blocks radio waves. This base was built to mine oil discovered after a dam burst 20 years ago, flooding the town. The lights switch to day mode and they can leave. For some reason, the ghosts won't attack during this cycle. They further explain that the mining equipment can leak radiation, which is why the Faraday cage was built, to act as a sort of nuclear shelter in the event of catastrophe. Examining the ship, the Doctor sees the pilot's suspended animation chamber is gone, as is one of the ship's power cells. Trying to analyze the see-through people logically, the Doctor comes to the conclusion they're true and proper ghosts. He starts to get overly excited until Clara has him calm down and read a card offering the proper condolences for their commander's death. Sooner than expected, the Drum enters night mode, and we begin to hear the TARDIS's cloister bell. The TARDIS isn't reacting well to this anomaly of ghosts in a world of life and death, so the Doctor puts the brakes on so it won't leave. When Clara wants to go back, he tries to stop her. He doesn't like that she's so excited about this, but they both want to go back out there, so they do. Pritchard returns from the outside, having been looking for the power cell, only to be confronted by the ghosts, who flood his airlock. Bennett and Clara are then gathering supplies when they see Pritchard with his back to them. A moment later, they're shocked to see his body float past the observation deck. He's now a ghost. O'Donnell gets day mode running and Pritchard vanishes. Cass, now acting commander, makes the call to abandon the base. Fascinating. Jamie, do you speak sign language?
Well, no, not as such.
What do you mean?
Well, I didn't know proper sign language, but I can communicate using only one finger.
I'd like to see that sometime.
I don't get that raise I want. You'll be the first one I try it out on.
What? They reach the surface only to find their bosses are already sending a rescue sub because they received an SOS from the Drum. The Doctor recalls the sub and declares a quarantine on the base. Since the ghosts apparently want that sub, it's in their best interest to stop it from coming. The Doctor wants to know what's different about the base in night mode, but the answers he gets aren't satisfactory. He wants to go back into night mode so that he can catch one of the ghosts. The team relay runs to draw the ghosts into a trap, but they split up to follow Clara and Tim. Clara evades hers, but Pritchard follows Tim through a door. Pritchard's ghost picks up a wrench, but ultimately disappears. Bennett lures the ghosts to the Faraday cage before veering off. They see Clara and follow her in, but it turns out to be a hologram the doctor's rigged up, and the ghosts are trapped in the Faraday cage. The doctor enters the cage, since the ghosts have no weapons, and uses his sunglasses to broadcast to the control room. Cass begins to read their lips. They're repeating, the dark, the sword, the forsaken, the temple. Ironically enough, the dark, the sword, the forsaken, and the temple are all the name of concept albums put out by Peter Capaldi's punk band in the 60s. The words are coordinates. The dark means space, and the sword refers to the Orion constellation, pointing to Earth. The forsaken means the flooded village. The ghosts are broadcasting these coordinates, meaning they're actually transmitters. More ghosts would mean a stronger transmission. The town's church is the temple in the coordinates. Bennett says they should leave now, but the doctor points out they'll never know how this could have ended, so the crew agrees to stay. They send a remote submarine to the church, where they find and retrieve the suspended animation chamber from the spaceship. The doctor realizes the ghost didn't turn hostile towards the crew until after the crew read the words in the spaceship. Those words are the coordinates. Reading them rewrote their brains to keep them thinking about them over and over, even beyond death. Those coordinates were meant to lead people to that pod and revive whoever's in it. The ghosts have caused a malfunction. The reactor is starting to overheat, so the base is flooding to keep it cool. Before they can get locked behind flood doors, they run to the TARDIS. It's their only way out. However, Clara, Tim, and Cass do get trapped in the base. Since the TARDIS won't go near the ghosts, the Doctor has to travel back in time to when the ship landed and work out what's happening to save Clara. However, in the observation room, the crew sees a new ghost, the Doctor. The next episode opens with the Doctor explaining Bootstrap Paradox. A man idolizes Beethoven. He travels back in time to meet him, but finds out he doesn't exist. So, to preserve Beethoven's music, he takes on the composer's identity and publishes the music he brought back with him. The paradox is this: if the time traveler didn't write the music and Beethoven never existed, who composed Beethoven's symphonies? I know the Doctor's speaking in hypothetical terms, but he's right. Beethoven didn't write his own music. It was Francis Bacon!
That's your answer to everything. Francis Bacon wrote it.
The man got around! Beethoven, Marlowe, G.C., it was all Francis Bacon! I'm not mad! The Doctor and O'Donnell arrive in 1980. She mentions all the things that haven't happened yet, including the Minister of War, but the Doctor stops her from elaborating as a now all vomited out Bennett joins them. The Doctor walks off, and O'Donnell delays just a moment to have a bigger on the inside fangirl moment. The entire town is made to look Russian. Cold War spies used to train here so they could infiltrate the Soviet Union. They find the landed spaceship complete with a dead body, suspension chamber, and no writing on the wall. They're greeted by the now living tuxedo ghost, Albar Prentice, funeral director. The body is the Fisher King, former ruler of Albar's planet. However, he was overthrown, and in accordance with their new ruler's customs, the king is to be buried on a savage remote planet, Earth. Cass lets them know the Doctor's ghost is saying something different from the others. Moran, Prentice, Pritchard, O'Donnell, Clara, Doctor, Bennett, Cass. The phone rings. It's the Doctor in the past, and Clara brings him up to speed. While the Doctor is accepting of this fate, Clara freaks out. She can't bear to lose him. If he loves her, he'll survive. Prentice returns to find the Fisher King's body gone and letters now carved into his ship. Clara can see his jacket is torn and tells him the list of names the ghost is repeating. His ghost then comes inside the observation deck, but does not try to kill them. He simply opens the Faraday cage. The ghost Doctor ignores living Doctor's phone call and begins mouthing, "The chamber will open tonight." Clara and company run to the Faraday cage with instructions to leave the phone outside so they can stay in touch with the Doctor in the past. The Doctor wants O'Donnell to stay in the TARDIS, but she's not having it. They find Prentice dead, the Fisher King missing, and the symbols in the ship. The suspended animation chamber is now in the church, and the trio hear a ferocious roar. They run, split up, and a creature walks past the Doctor and Bennett, but finds O'Donnell. They hear a gun fired and rush to her. She dies in Bennett's arms. Bennett realizes the list of names is the order in which they'll die. The Doctor knew that already. Since her ghost wasn't in the future like Prentice's was, he thought maybe she wouldn't die. Bennett still thinks the Doctor let it happen simply to see if it could. With Clara's name next on the list, the Doctor will do what he wouldn't for O'Donnell. He'll change history to save his friend. Watching the phone from the safety of the Faraday cage, Clara's shocked when O'Donnell's ghost appears. She takes the phone and walks off. The Doctor has decided to avoid his death and return to the base, But the TARDIS cloister bell goes off, and they rematerialize in the town about 30 minutes before their first arrival. They can save Prentice and O'Donnell, except no, they can't. The Doctor just tried, and the TARDIS wouldn't let him. But as soon as he sees O'Donnell, Bennett stands up, only for the Doctor to tackle him. Clara realizes Tim never saw the words, so the ghosts won't harm him. He can get the phone back. Cass isn't happy and asks if Clara has always been so cavalier with other people's lives. Being with the Doctor has taught her to be a bit ruthless when necessary. The Doctor stands and sees his jacket is now ripped. He decides to confront the Fisher King. As Tim heads out, the Doctor enters the church and finds the stasis chamber open. He tells the King he's only seen 4 or 5 ghosts so far, and the King knows the ghosts will simply multiply until he's finally rescued. In the future, or is that the present? The pod begins to power up. Tim makes contact with the ghosts, but they pull back and let him pass. The Fisher King explains his people will come to Earth and enslave it. The moment he picks up the phone, Tim is sealed in the observation room. We see the Fisher King knows the Doctor is a Time Lord, a gentle race that was prodded into great killing. Ugh. Well, the Fisher King is obviously some sort of half man, half bug, and half snake.
Riviera, that's 3 halves.
Well, that explains why the Fisher King is 150% ugly!
Oh, snap.
Clara and Cass decide to go look for Tim while the Fisher King berates the Doctor. He's seen the words, but is more devoted to protecting time rather than changing the future. Clara realizes Cass has gone off, and Cass in turn is being followed by Moran's ghost, unable to hear the axe he's dragging. The Doctor's incensed. The King violated one of the most fundamental rights in the universe, death, simply to turn innocent people into transmitters. Cass stops and feels the floor vibrating. She has enough warning to avoid the axe, and she runs away, collecting Clara as she goes. Just as the King is about to kill him, the Doctor tells the King that he's erased the words and prevented the future he came from. The King runs off to see if it's true. Tim, Cass, and Clara reunite in the observation deck, but it's a trap, and they run back to the Faraday cage. The King sees the words are still there. Just then, the missing power cell detonates, causing the dam to crumble. Inside the TARDIS, a hologram of the Doctor activates and tells Tim the TARDIS is making an emergency departure. As the ghosts corner them, Clara and company see the stasis pod begin to unseal. The flooding waters wash away the Fisher King, and the pod unseals, revealing the Doctor. They run to the control room, and he plugs his glasses into a port. A loud roar, the Fisher King's call, begins to broadcast, and the ghosts follow it into the Faraday cage, where it's coming from the Doctor's so-called ghost. As soon as the stasis pod was unloaded, his sonic glasses projected a hologram of the Ghost Doctor, and it, in turn, fulfilled the Doctor's role in death. He then uses the glasses to erase the words from their heads. Unit will cut out the cage and take away the ghosts. Bennett will just have to live without O'Donnell, though he tells Tim to tell Cass that Tim loves her. They shouldn't waste precious time on pretending things aren't how they really are. The pair kiss. Unit will take the ghosts off Earth, away from the planet's EM field, and they'll fade away. The list of names that the Ghost Doctor gave to the living Doctor was what motivated him. Seeing that Clara was about to die propelled him to confront the Fisher King and defeat him. The message about the chamber told the Doctor when to set the chamber to awaken him. But the Doctor only programmed his ghost to say those things because he witnessed the ghost saying them the first time around. The bootstrap paradox.
Hey, Riviera, why is it called the bootstrap paradox?
Well, Jamie, that's because one time traveler once went back in time and died, but his boots, which had straps made of Velcro, were discovered by one Anton Velcro. He patented them and made them famous, but no one ever actually invented Velcro.
Is that a lie?
One of my best. This was a very interesting set of episodes, but was it technically good? Let's take a closer look at Under the Lake and Before the Flood. The first thing I have to say is that for a time travel show, Doctor Who does not often deal with paradox. Except once in a blue moon, like with Father's Day. That's pretty much what this episode was all about. The effects that time travel can have on the past and the future. How certain ideas and things can just exist without creation. How cheating the future can actually create it in the first place. As for the specifics of this episode, the monsters were interesting. The Fisher King was a cool-looking creature, but suffered from rubber monster syndrome, where the costume is made of plastic and such causes it to bounce when walking. Still, it's a cool design, and nice to see a creature that isn't automatically human-sized. Whether it was just a little CGI trickery or just casting a tall actor in the role, I like that the Fisher King towered over the Doctor. The ghosts were creepy enough, but why did they not have eyes? Maybe you couldn't take them seriously if they made eye contact with you? It was one of those things that was never explained. I'm sure most of you remember that I was saying last year we were focused so much on Claire's life, romance, and the eventual loss of Danny Pink that it almost felt like the Doctor had become a supporting player in his own show. I will say that this episode, and most of what I've seen of this season, returns us to an era where the Doctor was front and center. This season has been the most like the classic series since the series relaunched. We're getting longer stories that follow the Doctor around on his adventures rather than continually checking back in on the companion in their personal life. But then, for Clara, it seems a little too far in the opposite direction of last year's extreme focus on her. We see no mourning for Danny other than her acknowledging life goes on with Bennett. I wouldn't mind checking in on Coal City's school a little more often and her family once in a while. After the extreme trauma in her life, we see her throwing herself into time-traveling adventures so much that it's almost like she's in denial. I wouldn't mind seeing how that denial is affecting her personal life away from the Doctor. As for the episode itself, Capaldi and Coleman do fine, as always. I enjoyed his reluctance and her enthusiasm, but otherwise it was just standard for them. As to the rest of the cast, I'm not going to go through each character individually because it's quite a large cast, a bit too large in my opinion. Specifically, it seemed like Bennett and O'Donnell were the same characters as Tim and Cass, just duplicated so we could split up the Doctor and Clara and they could each have their own set of people to play with. In fact, two couples without the courage to say I love you to each other, it seems like we had two so we could have a sad and happy ending. It was a case of having our cake and eating it too. I'd rather they combine the two sets of lover and just given us the happy or the sad ending. It was clever how they worked in Cass's signing and lip reading as a plot point. O'Donnell was an Osgood-style Doctor grouping, and given that Osgood's returning later this season, did we really need this type of character? Honestly, Tim and Bennett were practically the same character. There was also grumpy, greedy, and cowardly. And also that cliffhanger. You know the Doctor isn't going to die. While his appearance as a ghost may have had a momentary bit of shock value, you knew it wasn't going to stick. This episode was visually interesting and presented some complex ideas that you could have fun with, but the too large cast and ultimately consequence-free story really kept it from being something special. All in all, while there were a few bright spots, it was pretty much a standard and unremarkable episode. This episode had many interesting ideas, but suffered from what I felt was a bloated cast and cliffhangers that I was never that invested in. I give Doctor Who, Under the Lake and Before the Flood, 2 TARDISes out of 5. His story was decent, just not exceptional. Until next time, my friends, I am the reviewer. And this is You Know Who!